I honestly wasn't expecting it to go that way. I'm John Barry, and welcome to my review of Star Wars Shadowfall by Alexander Freed. So this book is a sequel to Alexander Freed's Star Wars Alphabet Squadron. It's the second in what's going to be a trilogy of books. And like any second installment, especially in the Star Wars trilogy, this book puts the characters at the lowest. It's typically where you get a lot more character development because the characters are at the lowest and therefore have to overcome immense difficulty. Of course, that doesn't mean everything will line up perfectly, but it is the lowest so far in the Alphabet trilogy, for lack of a better term, the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. And definitely, they're at the lowest. Both the protagonists and the antagonists are also at the lowest, which is actually kind of interesting to say, but it does make sense. So, as I said earlier, it did not go the way I was expecting, especially based off the title. Shadowfall kind of makes it seem like, oh, Shadow Wing will fall. They will be broken and destroyed. They're no longer a threat. But then, if it's going to be a trilogy, who's going to be the antagonist in book 3? So it has to be Shadow Wing. So, actually, it makes sense why Shadow Wing doesn't get destroyed, but at the same time, the title does kind of give that impression. So, and that's not the only reason why it didn't go the way I expected, no. But we can get into that now, because there's no better time than the present. So, first of all, I did not expect that the character who I would say since the book 1 has been our focal character, our main character, Yoko Crow, will decide to go back to Shadowing. However, she's not going back out of loyalty. She's running. She's running from her troubles, her issues, her problems. All that goes back to Operation Cinder and what she did on Narcosis. I think that's how you pronounce the plan name that Shadowwing targeted. So she's running from that. In a way, she's been running from it since Alphabet Squadron. First by concocting a fake version and suppressing the original versions, and then by not telling everyone the truth when the truth did come out, or when she came to understand the truth herself. And now that everyone knows the truth, she's running. She is running, and that's the best way. She's not dealing with her problems. She's running away from them. She's running, in this case, back to the older instructor she once knew. But she's going to probably find out in the next book that it's no longer the same. Though actually, Shadowing now is operating more like a rebel cell rather than an Imperial TIE Fighter wing. The rebels are operating more like the Empire now in terms of, who is waging the most successful war, who has the resources, who has the equipment, who can use, and the tactics used. Rebels, now the New Republic, can use conventional military tactics, but the Empire has to use some old rebel tactics. So there's this change in the war that the Alphabet Squadron novels are showing, particularly in this one. But at the same time, you get some touch of how the sides really are different. A lot has to do with, how the New Republic, much like the rebels, like, if they have to go back to kind of more old school rebel tactics, they can do so with relative ease. They're more open to, debate and discussion, while the Empire is like, you do what's needed, you follow orders. But you can see that's somewhat breaking down, because in Shadowwing, all the squadron commanders are meeting together when they are devising their strategy, in a sense, voting on it. And of course, one character, Kozin, I think, ranked major, but he came back at the end of Alphabet Squadron novel. We followed him as a character named Devin in that book, but he's back with Shadowing now. And he's given the role of advisor, so not really their commander, their colonel. So he is given that rank, and all of a sudden they're behaving, again, more like the typical military unit where the commanding officers gives orders and you follow through on them. But you can still see there's some of that what they picked up when basically they have an official commando, official commanding officers. You can still see some of that there. And of course, Shadow Wing is pretty badly damaged during all this. They are now using basically a freighter as their carrier. So that tells you what's all going on. And so, just going back to the character Yoko Quell, I have a feeling she's not going to remain loyal to the Empire. Because it won't be the Empire she remembered, first of all, but also because eventually her past is going to catch up to her. She's going to have to deal with it, make a tough choice, and being the character we are following, it's probably going to be a choice for the better, because, Star Wars generally does like happy endings for the most part when they finish the story. Middle of the story, no problem giving you some heart-wrench endings and very difficult ones, but when they get to the actual end of the story, then they really do like more happy endings. But that's not always the case. Take Revenge of the Sith. It's kind of bittersweet in a way. By going back to what I think a lot with what Yoko Quell is going through with a character arc and dealing with as a character, she stole a ship. And I have a feeling that ship that she stole from, and one of the Emperor's observatories, mind you, is somehow going to play into what's going to occur in the next book in some way. Whereas, like using it somehow to send messages to the New Republic. Now, I'm thinking very optimistically, but I could almost see Major Kaizen, how do you say his name, ordering her to kind of still support the New Republic. I could just see that, because he's the one who ordered her to defect, as we found out in the first book. So I could see something like that, seeing maybe that she's not cut out for whatever, all that. So, but like, Yoko Quell is the example of the person who is almost also trapped by the same system. Same thing with Major Kaizen, how do you say his name? I can never pronounce it. But they're both kind of trapped by the Imperial system. They feel like they don't belong outside of it, but at the same time they're not suited for it. So they feel trapped by it in a sense. That's what I've gathered. With Yoko Quell, it's more trapped by the system because it provides her comfort in times of distress. But with Major Cousins, he's trapped by the system because he feels some loyalty to the pilots. And actually, speaking of that, in a lot of military units, loyalty is often more to your comrades, your fellow soldiers, pilots, whatever, than to the organization that you are fighting for. That happens a lot. No matter what war you're talking about, definitely the ones that we have more primary sources from the individual soldiers' viewpoint, definitely, but often happens where your comrades you're more loyal to and you care more about than the actual war itself. So that's just something to keep in mind, and I think we're actually somewhat seeing that play out, and we're going to see Yoko Quell at a point torn between her loyalty to her Shadow Wing comrades, which you probably will barely recognize, and then her comrades from Alphabet Squadron. There's going to be that thing there. And also, it's kind of sad that she thinks she has no place other to go than back to the Empire, not realizing that one member of her squadron, the Y-Wing pilot, and that's Tenzin, was also Imperial deserter, though from defector, though from before Yavin, I think it was, or just Ava, right around that time. And then, of course, Harrison Dula was willing to welcome her back. Remember, in Rebels, Hero's Rebel Cell recruited an ISB agent to be a part of the Rebel Cell, so she's no stranger to having some controversial rebels in her cell based off of the former past. And it's just really only two of them that had a gut instinct reaction against her. All the others seem not to really have cared about her past. But she seems like thinks everyone will care about her past, and now that the truth is out, she will immediately be, taken away and, locked up forever. Of course, one thing though I've noticed about the rebels is that they really, if you join them, they really don't care about what war crimes you committed while you were a part of the Empire. That is one, it's kind of a fault for them, but it's also kind of a strength for them in some regards, because that deprives the Empire of assets, for lack of a better way of expressing it. But other things I want you to talk about in this review are the other characters. Nat's Tencent, he doesn't get much in a way, but we can still tell that he doesn't want to take command up again, because he once was a right-wing squadron commander, and his squadron was decimated by shadowing. He clearly doesn't, even though he's probably, other than Yoko Crow, of the members of the Alphabet Squadron, the one most suited for command, he doesn't want to take it up. And when Shadowwing basically fails to string the trap that the New Republic set up for them in the way the New Republic expected them to, they ended up basically wrecking the New Republic's progress on the planet that they were stationed at, that Alphabet Squadron and Jensen Duer's forces were stationed at. And so the planet's in chaos, and the New Republic forces are scattered and all over the place. While Nas Tense is the Y-Wing pilot, and then the A-Wing pilot, Ryo, I forget the rest of his name, unfortunately. I could look it up, I'm not. They are on the planet doing all of this, and they're like the only air support the New Republic has left for the few soldiers in the New Republic infantry that were able to gather together. And because Nas proposes that Ryo lead the starfighters, the air forces, because he feels like he doesn't want to take command, and also knows that Ryo has the ability to command if he's just given now the opportunity, but also the experience doing so. And we also see Ryo growing as a commander, as a leader during their time, basically, essentially acting as rebels once again. Them in the New Republic infantry decide to go to this location because they figure it'd be a great place to stage hit and run attacks from. And guess who also had the same thought? Shadowing, though they were more interested in the freighter there that they were going to, which they hoped to use to escape, which they do. And of course they added a bunch of the down Star Destroyers, ordinances on there to give it a little more punch. But also, before those New Republic, so Alphabet Squadron, the New Republic Infantry, which is the 200, whatever mobile infantry, I forget its number, 200 something, 201st, 261st, something like that, mobile infantry, which is the same unit from Star Wars Battlefront Twilight Company, which I still need to read that one. So if you want to see that, like this video. If we get to 100 likes, I'll read that book. But going back to what the New Republic is doing, they actually made contact with the former workers of a closed airspeeder production facility, and they get their hands on 3 airspeed. Actually, I think maybe it was 4, and they were going to use one for parts, or was that salvaged ties by the Shadowwing? Something that happened by Shadowwing, definitely. But they get their hands on 3 working airspeeders and a V-wing starfighter, so they can create basically 2 flights, some airspeeders and some starfighters. So, and then eventually engage Shadowwing. And so yeah, so we get an A-wing, an Y-wing, and a V-wing. They just need the X-wing, and the B-wing, and the U-wing. Actually, it would be neat if they kept that V-wing starfighter around, because V-wings, unlike the original Star Wars Battlefront game showed, are actually interceptors, not bombers. So, just thought I saw that out there. But I'm losing my train of thought here, but I'm going to continue on talking so it doesn't sound like I am. But eventually, the Shadowwing escapes the planet. Meanwhile, I don't want to say Alphabet Squadron, but especially just to say New Republic forces attempt to impede them, and they successfully stop missiles that the Shadowwing launched from the modified freighter. They stop the missiles at the planet from hitting the planet. They do this mostly by shooting said missiles down. But Nas Tencent, what he does, he parks his Y-wing right in the path, but just in such a way that the missile hits the edge of his shield and therefore stops working and just lands harmlessly, which is actually a pretty ingenious strategy. And then he gets a reward for doing so. But yeah, there's really a lot I could also discuss. We could talk about the relationship between Shadowwing and the local Imperials, where Shadowwing just wants to get off the planet, not really liberate the planet, they just want to hit the New Republic hard. And actually the acting governor, who the New Republic told us, basically either an undersecretary and assistant secretary to one of the cabinet ministers for the Imperial government there. And truly, how could, that truly a secession crisis if there ever was one, where even crazier than what happened in Battlestar Galactica, where the 28th in line was what, the Secretary of Education? Higher up in the US. I don't even remember. I haven't even watched Battlestar Galactica yet. I just know a few things. But getting back to Shadowwing, or I should say Shadowfall, it's a good book, good read, even though I didn't expect it to go the way it did. I'm interested in seeing what happens to the characters following, though some characters we won't find out what happens to are, it was the Imperial Intelligence operatives New Republic Intelligence operatives that formed Alphabet Squadron. Karen Adden, I think was his name. He dies and gets sucked into a black hole. Same thing with his ITO droid. Disabled and sucked into a black hole. Kiros, I can't say her name, the U-Wing pilot, well, she's badly injured, but she does recover, and we find that out at the end. So we're learning a little bit about her. We learned a little bit about her, mostly that just she and Aiden and then the ITO droid escaped from an Imperial, basically concentration camp. They escaped from there, and that's about it we learn about her. Hopefully we'll learn a little more about her in the next book, or maybe a lot more, because each book we've learned something about each Alphabet Squadron character. Just the U-Wing Pad's the one we've learned the least about, and I think that was kind of on purpose. It was intentional. We also get her most speaking lines, or whatever you want to call them, because she doesn't really speak, but she is given lines and things to say in the book. So it's interesting just to watch all this unfold. Overall, though, just to give some closing thoughts, I think, as I said earlier, it's a good read. I recommend you reading, especially if you like pilots and all that. I still think I prefer the original X-Wing books to the Alphabet Squadron books. The Legends X-Wing books, I'm just gonna be honest. I think I prefer them a bit more, but these are pretty good books. Just maybe not just there's not as much overarching and connectiveness between the books as I would like, especially when it comes to galactic events. Though we know we're getting closer to Jakku, because I know at this point, Sloane has become a Grand Admiral and has basically taken control of the Empire. So that helps place us in the timeline. We're getting closer. But that's really all I have to say. If there's anything you would like to add, I would love to hear from you. The comment section is down below. Also, please consider liking the video if you haven't done so already and you enjoyed it. Also, follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter. Links are in the description, as are the links for my Discord server and my Patreon page if you'd like to support the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so. And feel free to check out either the video or the playlist on screen now. And as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.